Hello children, I hope you all had a lovely week and were able to watch our video lesson on the story of Gideon. I hope you did the worksheet and activity. I would love to see some photos of your work. Our story this week is of Gideon and his fight against the Midianites. Here we go. This week our story continues of Gideon, who God chose. God had a work for Gideon to do, and today we will see what an amazing work God did. Our story is taken from the book of Judges, chapters 6 and 7. The Bible tells us of a time when the Midianites, a wicked and warlike people, came like a plague of grasshoppers and swarmed over the land of Israel. The Midianites just took over the land, and hopelessly outnumbered by their enemies, the people of Israel left their homes and fled into the wilderness, leaving most of their possessions behind. Living in the wilderness often meant being hungry and cold. The Israelites had a real struggle for existence. Rich people became poor, and poor people became desperately poor. Israel as a nation was poverty-stricken, and they cried to the Lord to deliver them from the miserable existence. We read in the Bible that a family of Gideon was one of the poorest in Israel, and Gideon was the youngest son. That, according to ancient custom, made Gideon the least important. So Gideon was used to taking orders and doing plenty of hard work. When Gideon was told by an angel of the Lord that God had chosen him to deliver Israel from the Midianites, Gideon's reaction was much as we might have expected it to be. "Me?" he said. "I'm supposed to deliver my people from the Midianites?" Gideon was sure a mistake had been made. Gideon explained to the angel that his family was poor, and being the youngest, he wasn't very important at all. The angel told Gideon that no mistake had been made. Gideon was the one God had chosen, and God would help him if he would trust God. So on the basis of his faith in God, Gideon started to work. The first thing Gideon did was to organize the men of Israel and get them ready to fight. And all in all, there were 32,000 men. And that was to fight an army of 135,000 Midianites. But when God said that that was too many, Gideon spoke to his men and ordered those who were afraid to fight to leave the army and go back home. When Gideon gave his men a choice of whether or not to fight, many of the men left the camp. Even though they knew God had promised victory to their leader, they also knew the Midianites outnumbered them 4-1. Gideon's new army was much smaller than before, yet it was stronger. These men were not afraid to fight, but would courage make up for the lack of numbers? Now Gideon only had 10,000 men, and God alone knew how such a small army could conquer far more than 10 times their number. Gideon was beginning to realize the true meaning of trusting God. But God was preparing another test of Gideon's faith, and when Gideon talked to the Lord about the size of his army, he got a surprising answer. The Lord said that 10,000 men were still too many. There was only one thing for Gideon to do, and that was to trust and obey. At the Lord's command, Gideon brought his men down to the water and told them to drink. Most of the men bowed down on their knees and drank right out of the stream. And the Lord told Gideon to put these men aside in one group. 300 men lapped the water from their hands, and the Lord said, By the 300 men that lapped, I will save you and deliver the Midianites into your hands. Let all the other people go." Now Gideon faced an unbelievable odds. 450 to 1 in the enemy's favour. One thing was clear. Unless the Lord performed a miracle, Gideon and his 300 men were facing certain death. In the camps of the Midianites, the midnight hour was the time for changing the guard. It was a noisy affair, and that provided a wonderful opportunity for Gideon. While the Midianites were changing guard, Gideon and his men carried out the first part of their plan. As far as the Midianite guards were concerned, there was nothing surrounding their camp but the emptiness of the night. Little did they realize that Gideon and his men were stealing through the darkness on a very strange mission, each one carrying a clay jar in one hand and a trumpet in the other. And hidden within each clay jar was a lighted firebrand. At last, every man was in position, waiting for the signal from Gideon, ready to do exactly as their leader did. Then Gideon blew on his trumpet. He broke his clay jar. He held his torch high and cried, "The sword of the Lord and of Gideon." All around the camp, the Midianites, the 300, did as their leader had done. The Midianite guards were struck dumb. In a matter of seconds, the camp of the Midianites was a scene of fear and confusion. They thought a great army had taken them by surprise. Their entire camp must be surrounded. Where could they go? What should they do? Like a herd of wild animals in utter panic, the Midianites began to stampede. Suddenly, in the midst of all this confusion, Gideon's men blew loud and long on their horns again. Then a strange thing happened in the army of the Midianites. Every man turned blindly on his neighbour, and they began to fight one another. The Lord caused them to fight each other in the darkness. Gideon drove the Midianites out of the land, and they never came back again. And the Lord gave a tremendous victory to Gideon because he trusted in God. Gideon learned that where God is concerned, believing and doing go together. But more important still, he learnt that one man multiplied by God's power equals victory, no matter what the odds. Goodbye, children, and I hope you enjoyed the lesson on Gideon. Don't forget to download the activity sheets. There's quite a few of them, and we also have some puppets for you to cut out again if you would like to do them and do the story of Gideon. Bye for now.